Okay, let's be real. This patch has got us screaming and leaking like a lava cake. The final epilogue chapter for season 2 is finally here, and I have to say, I am pretty impressed. First off, I did wanted to upload a playthrough video, but I realized I sounded very tired as I was kinda sleep deprived at that time. Oh my god, I can't believe my eyes. Backshots. And I don't think it's the energy we want for this awesome patch, unless you're into ASMR playthrough. So instead, I gathered all my thoughts to mention the moments I enjoyed quite a lot. For those who haven't done the story yet, this whole video is going to be a spoiler, and if you just want to know what's going on, since a number of my viewers don't play, I'll try my best to explain some context of what happened. And plus, who knows, if this video somehow reaches the depths by chance, it can be a little hint about what parts of the story that actually worked really well from this very humble player. Zenless Zone Zero version 2.8 is dropping, and I already know this patch is about to have some of us acting a little reckless. New banners, a new reason to lose all financial restraint. Which is why this segment is sponsored by BuffBuff. BuffBuff is an officially authorized partner of Tencent Games, so your account stays safe and secure. The prices are cheaper, like you can get the 6480 monochromes for only $94.89. And if you're a new user, you also get an extra 5% off. It's also a super simple 3-step process. Don't worry, you've got plenty of payment options like card, PayPal, Google Play, and Apple Pay. You name it. So before you dive into the Gamba arena, check out BuffBuff. Hit the link in the description and my pinned comment and use my code KIT01 for 10% off. That is KIT01 for 10% off on any ZZZ and HSR top-ups at BuffBuff. First is definitely Billy's transformation. It's so stupidly unserious, but very on brand. I think the whole origin story of how he even got the upgrade was already peak Billy nonsense. Like, there's no traditional power-up or training arc. He just straight up borrowed half a year's salary to buy a bike and look cool. And if you missed it, he actually could have gotten it at a cheaper price, but he was too impatient and paid at a high cost to rush the process. But honestly, he's so real for that. And I like how the siblings just hit him with, yeah, but you can't buy merch anymore. And he's like, oh shit, you're right. And that cutscene during his transformation was literally peak comedy. The lines, the music, the poses, they all cooked. Even the ethereals had to stop and stare to see the madness. I was having a good laugh when he said at the end of his lines about being sponsored by Nicole's wallet. Also, there's Eos getting awed by him and copying his pose was such a cute little touch. The overall story around Billy works so well because it leans into his goofy personality and his relationship with others. It feels like the writers understand exactly what makes Billy appealing. Because we're already familiar with him, I'm glad how they didn't try to push a new narrative, whether by forcing another tragic backstory or a sudden serious personality shift just to make his moment feel important. And instead, everything we already know about him comes together to give us the ultimate Billy moment. Another part of the story I liked is how we get to see more of the siblings' personalities. I remember thinking about this when I first played ZZZ and saw them playfully teasing Corin, but now it's clear as day, these two are Rizzlers. And I'm not talking about the usual fan service stuff. I mean, like the way they actually pay attention to small details, like Billy's new upgrade that was barely even visible to everyone else. Take notes, that's how you do it. And not to mention the cinema scene. So what happened was, when they were tracing back Ramiel's whereabouts, Haley was surprised that the sibling, in my case is Wise, brought more than one person to the movies this time. This is because in the game there's an event where you can bring different NPCs and playable characters on a movie date. And the other siblings started being suspicious, like, what do you mean my sibling is going around with different different people to watch movies. It really felt like some inside joke, so I appreciate the extra dialogue. I think this kind of writing works because it adds some sort of immersion and makes the player feel more connected to the world. You know, usually side events like this exist in their own little bubble, but here the game takes something we may have done for rewards and casually brings it back into the main story. Even if it's just a small joke, it gives the world more continuity by breaking down the walls between different types of in-game content. I also like how they're not always trying to act nice, which sometimes makes them awkward in conversations. I mean, they've been on edge with some characters before, like Magus, but that's because she was kind of hostile in the beginning. So when it comes to strangers or enemies, being tense is expected. But with friends they're already close with, that bluntness adds more depth to the siblings' personalities. For example, well, I don't know how it is for Belle, but coming from Wise, it was pretty funny. It's the fact that he is the one who is usually calm and collected, but this time bro almost lost his patience.
You've been rambling behind me the whole way, and I'm not giving you a single penny of the video store's earnings.
We can see House being more sassy with Billy recently, and even that one conversation with Bernice.
She said she wants to go to this dreamy garden full of nitro-fuel trees.
There's no such thing as nitro fuel trees. Did the nitro fuel go to your heads or something?
For Wise, he really reminds me of this guy from a very niche internet joke, and his name is Thomas. I also want to mention that Billy and Cissia's dynamic really worked well here. Like, who would have thought these two would end up having some of the best chemistry in the game? I mean, they sort of teased it in the first epilogue and fleshed it out even more in the second half. They're both silly in their own way, and the energy just bounces off on each other. With how dark and serious the story can get, their dynamic keeps the story fun without ruining the tension. And I'm actually glad that they're sticking with us to the next season, because I can feel that we're going to have some really good episodes ahead. I was already expecting Billy to come along because he appeared in the Rose Califer concept art, but I didn't expect Cissia to join us too. So I guess she's not just a one-time character after all, which is honestly exciting because her dynamic with everyone has been really fun so far. Of course, as a proud board member of Yaoi Nation and a certified male character enjoyer, I am legally obligated to bring up the Lighter and Billy scene. Like, guys, we've come so far. I mean, Menless Zone Zero is still Menless Zone Zero, but we cannot deny that the few men they give us are Michelin starred. We don't talk about the meta here. I know that Lighter has always admired Billy from afar, but I was so thrilled to see it actually being shown in a voiced scene. First off, the voice acting was chef's kiss. You can hear the fondness and respect in Lighter's voice when he talks to Billy.
Bro, this new look of yours.
So what do you think? Don't I shine like starlight?
Yeah, you sure do. An enemy could probably spot you from a mile away.
What I like about this scene is that Lighter starts off trying to suggest that Billy could return to his original form and become even stronger, which sounds like an encouragement at first. But Billy's answer turns the scene into something more deeper. He makes it clear that he doesn't want to go back to the version of himself that was feared and remembered only as a weapon. Instead, he wants to move forward as Starlight Knight Billy. It is childish on the surface, but it is kind of empowering, because that identity is something he chose for himself. So in a way, Lighter tries to help Billy by looking backward, but Billy ends up helping Lighter by looking forward. He shows that you don't have to be trapped by the version of yourself that people remember. And that's why I think this scene connects to Lighter too, because Lighter is watching someone refuse to be defined by their old reputation, and that feels very relevant to his own struggles with the past. Honestly, I could yap about this for another hour, but it's such a gem to find a scene where support shifts from being one-sided into a shared journey, leaving the oil and blood behind for something brighter. It really felt like they finally gave the two champions connection a nice little closure. And finally, of course, the aura farming is insane. Besides Billy's transformation scene, we have Phaethon's unfinished ethereal form. I kid you not, I was shitting my pants. I'm not built for this! What is happening? Why are there 4 of them? Zeus! Why? This is not you guys! Get down here! Great, we're all dead. Listen, if that unfinished creature was already that powerful, I fear for whatever Pyrosis full summoning is going to look like. That scene was terrifying, intense, and arousing. Anyways, words cannot fully describe that scene. You guys have to see it and experience it for yourself if you haven't. All I know is, after they laid the groundwork like that, I'm very excited to see where the story goes next. However, there are some aspects that left me a little unsatisfied. They don't mean they're necessarily bad, but things that, perhaps may improve the whole experience. I was a bit surprised it was quite shorter than expected. I believe it's about like 2 hours and a half if you don't spend more time gooning over anyone during the story. I don't feel like it's rushed, but it's more straightforward compared to previous ones. I don't know if it's because we're used to being edged to get to the final cut, but it does leave me wanting a little bit more. Billy's transformation was very on brand, it was already perfect, but I think it's quite short because we didn't have time to explore the new characters like Promia. Compared to season 1's final epilogue, we get to know more about Hugo and Vivian. And for Promia, she's a very interesting character, but unfortunately we only get to know her only through her past with Cissia in the main story. Of course, there are trust events and whatnot, but maybe they will show more in the next season, but it is her banner right now. So it's quite fair if she had a little arc of her own story as well, since she's not having a separate character story, which ZZZ rarely makes anymore. And it is the same thing that happened to Namgong and a couple other more characters of season 2. I don't know if they're saving their story for future patches or not, but I guess we're only given a fraction of their lore in game for now. But enough of me whining. I feel like this has got to be one of my favorite episodes in this season. Even though it's short, I like the pacing. To me, it's a very ZZZ chapter. I love the self-aware jokes, the silly little banters, and especially the aura farming where every character gets to shine. Besides the sentimental scenes, all of that also becomes part of the emotional resonance. I felt the same adrenaline rush I had when I played this story for the first time. I don't know how people jump into this ZZZ is losing its identity bandwagon, because personally I feel like they were trying to experiment how far they can go with the urban fantasy theme. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically when supernatural, mythical, or even sci-fi elements exist within a populated town or city setting. So having beasts, angel-like figures, and especially heavy Greek mythology inspiration in a futuristic world still makes sense. Plus, we already have human characters who live for hundreds of years, so ZZZ was never purely grounded in normal human logic anyway. My only critique, and I have said this before, is that the writing and pacing could have been improved a little for season 2. I still enjoyed it regardless, but I do think the experimentation got a little bit off the rails. Not all of them, but from my perspective, some chapters started to lose the core elements that made ZZZ's narrative and dialogue so fun and interesting in the first place. It does seem like they were leaning into the darker theme they mentioned, which I'm all in for, but sometimes the balance felt uneven. A deep or a very emotional scene can sometimes feel forced or even can cringe when it hasn't been properly earned. So instead of making us feel more invested, it can make the audience feel fatigued or detached. And in the end, it sometimes feels like the story got so focused on being heavier that it forgot to bring enough of the usual ZZZ charm with it. And in this chapter, as well as the interlude one with Angels of Delusion, I think they sort of nailed it back again. They found what makes Zenless Zenless, and I hope they keep that momentum in the future. Also remember, I am only talking about the story here and not covering for any other elements in the game, so please be aware of that. One thing I wonder is how these first-gen Void Hunters are still alive. I too am curious. This is only copium theory, so take it with no grain of salt, but did Sunbringer made an elixir of immortality or something and became like the abundance of ZZZ? And Ramiel is like the Shenzhou Alliance trying to stop her from making more abominations because Sunbringer's sort of taking away humanity's right to mortality? But enough of copium talks. I am very curious to know what exactly happened. And that's all for my 2.8 story quest honest opinion. Probably going to save a more in-depth yap and analysis for another video, and especially for season 3 that is coming, so stay tuned. And here are the kittens shout out for this week. Thank you for your support and feel free to join us if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!